Hey guys, it's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at some emulation performance on a $20 Android phone that I picked up for Black Friday. Now these are actually still on sale, but they're $34.99. On Black Friday, my local Walmart had a stack of these for $19.99, and I figured I'd go ahead and pick one up. I've actually been eyeballing this for the last couple months, but it was just way too expensive for what you're getting. But at $20, I figured it was well worth picking up and taking a look at. In this video, I am not reviewing the phone as a phone. I just want to take a look at the emulation performance and what we can get away with on a $20 device like this. There was actually a lot of different devices that I wanted to pick up for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, especially these cheap prepaid, otherwise known as no contract phones. They even had some as low as $15 at Walmart. But this is the cheapest one I picked up, and it's known as the LG K8 Plus. I believe this is for US Cellular, but I think T-Mobile and everybody else carries the same phone. Now, if you're interested in picking up one of these cheap prepaid phones for emulation, don't go with a Verizon phone. The last one I picked up, I couldn't even get past the activation screen. But I've never had any trouble with the prepaid phones from Simple Mobile, T-Mobile, or US Cellular. Now, another thing to think about when you're picking up one of these phones for emulation is a controller. You can always get by with using the on-screen controls, but my go-to controller for these phones here is the Sataki 7007X. This is a $30 to $34 controller you can pick up on Amazon. It connects over Bluetooth, and this is my go-to controller for Android emulation. But there are cheaper options out there. If you already own a PS4 controller, you can just get a phone mount. This will require a little more setup than the Xbox One controller, and that's the one I really recommend. A lot of people already have these laying around the house. All you need is a $5 phone clip and you're good to go. You can start using this controller with your Android device. So obviously this is a very inexpensive Android phone, but we still get that 3.5mm audio jack, and don't expect USB Type-C because it's still rocking micro USB. But it does have a user replaceable battery and a micro SD card slot. And as specs go, for the CPU, we have the Snapdragon 425. This is a quad-core CPU at 1.4 GHz. The GPU is the Adreno 308 at 450 MHz, 2 GB of LPDDR3 RAM, a 5-inch IPS 720p display, 16 GB of built-in storage, but we do have that micro SD card slot, good up to a 64 GB card. And I say 64 GB because that's the highest capacity I tested. It's got a 2500 mAh user replaceable battery, 802.11 Wi-Fi. There's no AC built in, so you cannot pick up that 5 GHz network, but we do have Bluetooth 4.1. And the operating system is Android Oreo 8.1.0. So I got a good idea of what kind of emulation performance we can expect out of this thing, and overall it seems just about as powerful as a Raspberry Pi 3, but we have that built-in screen and it's rechargeable. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into some testing. First up, we're going to go with Gameboy, and for most of this stuff I am using RetroArch with different cores, and I have the Xbox One S controller connected over Bluetooth. I will have the name of the system and box art on screen so you know it's playing at any given time, and I also have the FPS listed when I can. It's going to be up in the top right hand corner when I'm using RetroArch. Overall, the lower end systems are going to run just fine on here. Atari 800, Game Boy as you can see, NES, PC Engine, Neo Geo, Neo Geo Pocket, Neo Geo Pocket Color. There are tons of systems that are going to run at full speed, and thousands of your favorite retro games can be played on this device. So I'm going to let this play through for a little while. I got a couple more systems to test out here, and then we'll get into some higher end stuff like Dreamcast and PSP. In addition to the systems you just saw, PlayStation 1 runs great on here. I'm using RetroArch with the PC-SX Rearm core. And I also tested out Bloody Roar 2, which seems to give a lot of these lower end devices a run for its money, but we're sitting pretty steady at 60. Another one that really surprised me was Nintendo DS, given I am using the Drastic emulator from the Google Play Store, and the developer over there has done an amazing job with this to get it to run at full speed on lower end devices, but to see it running this well on a $20 device kind of blows my mind. And then I tried some higher end stuff, like Dreamcast and PSP, and it wasn't that great. Unfortunately, I couldn't get Redream to install from the Google Play Store. It wasn't even listed, and I tried to sideload it from another app, but it wouldn't install. I'm not sure if I was using a 64-bit version or what, so I had to resort to using Raycast, and this is Soul Calibur. We're not quite at full speed. I mean, this little thing is trucking along and it's trying so hard to run this. But this game was about the best performance I got out of it, because when I moved over to Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it just kept crashing, but even on the intro menu, it was a bit slow. N64 is kind of hit or miss on these lower-end Android devices. I'm using MuPin64 FZ from the Google Play Store. And overall, performance is pretty decent with a lot of the games. The more popular stuff will run at full speed, like Mario 64 here, Mario Kart, F-Zero X, Beetle Adventure Racing, even Super Smash Bros. Ran pretty well, but there are games that are going to struggle, like GoldenEye 007. As you can see here, we're just not getting great performance with this one. But I was still surprised to see that a lot of the games I tested ran at a pretty decent frame rate. And finally, we have some PSP emulation using PPSSPP. This is Tekken Dark Resurrection at 1x resolution. I'm pretty much set the low here. And it's so close to keeping a steady 60 FPS. But if you are going to be using one of these devices for emulation, you might want to think about turning on frame skip. I personally don't like frame skip, but I did have to enable it for a lot of games on this device. Here's Ratchet & Clank, Size Matters, and I do have frame skip set to 1. This was the only way I could get it to run at a decent speed. And we still got frame skip going on, and I hate the way it looks. But if I disable frame skip, it'll run at around 20 FPS, and this originally ran at 30. So in the end, I'm actually pretty impressed with the emulation performance of this device, given the price I paid on it. Now, if I had to pay $50 more at the $35 mark, I wouldn't be that impressed, but at 20 bucks, this would be well worth it. I'd say the performance is on par with the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, but you gotta remember this will never have HDMI out, and if you want to cast this to a screen, there'll be major lag. Would I recommend getting one of these specifically for emulation? Well, if you don't have another device to run your emulators on, let's say you run an iOS device and you don't want to do any jailbreaking or sideload any unsigned apps on it, then certainly, yes, if you can pick one of these up for cheap enough, I think it would be worth it just to mess around with it. But if you already have an Android device in your pocket that's much more powerful than this, just install some emulators, get a nice little controller, and start playing away. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I really appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or you want to see anything else running on this device, just let me know in the comments below. But like always, thanks for watching.